Hi everyone, for today's lesson we are going to be focusing on mastering the ability to write equivalent fractions and to simplify fractions. And by the end of today's lesson you should be able to answer the question, how do you know when fractions are in simplest form? So let's go ahead and start by talking what equivalent fractions are. Those mean that they are fractions that are equal to each other. So I provided you guys a visual example because some of you learn better from looking at numbers, but me for one, I learn really well from looking at visual examples that I can relate to. So here we have images. They're clearly the same thing of equivalent fractions, just broken up into different parts. So we can see here that 3/4 is equal to 6/8, which is also equal to 9/12. They're equivalent fractions. Doesn't mean that they're in simplest form, but they are equal to each other. With that being said, we need to talk about what it means when a fraction is in simplest form. It's when a fraction's numerator and denominator, so the top number and the bottom number, have no common factors other than 1. So take a look at this example. We have 1/3 and 3/9. They're equivalent fractions, but 1/3 is in simplest form because 1 and 3 are prime numbers. We've talked about this before. Prime numbers are only divisible by 1 and itself. So 1/3 would be the fraction that's in simplest form. With that knowledge of equivalent fractions, we are going to talk about using factors. We're finding the GCF, the greatest common factor, in order to find and solve for at least 3 different types of equivalent fractions. So this is an example. We're asked to write 3 fractions that are equivalent to 24/30. The first thing that needs to be done is we need to list out all of the factors of each of these values. So listed here are all the factors of 1 through 24, and then all the factors from 1 to 30. And we look at those common factors, which are circled. So if we take a look here, we take our original fraction, 24/30, and we're going to divide the numerator and the denominator by 2 to equal an equivalent fraction of 12/15. We do the same thing with another common factor of 3. We're going to divide both the numerator and the denominator by 3 to calculate an equivalent fraction of 8/10. And then the same with the factor of 6. We're going to divide both the numerator and the denominator by 6 to equal 4/5. Now in this case, for this fraction of 24/30, the greatest common factor is equal to 6. We can see here that we listed out all the factors just like we did when we used prime factorization. It all ties into itself. We can see here that once we listed out all of the factors of both of these values, that 6 is the largest factor that they have in common. And with that being said, when we divide both the numerator and the denominator by the greatest common factor, that is when you will have a fraction that is in simplest form. 4/5 is in simplest form. So let's go ahead and do an example together. And we're asked to use factors to write 3 equivalent fractions of, I'm not using that example, of 27/81. So first thing we need to do is list out all of the factors of 27, which are 1, 3, 9, and 27. And one way you can visualize how to do that is that 1 times 27 is 27, and 3 times 9 is 27. There are no other factors that go into 27 that's a whole number and that won't create a decimal. Next, we are going to also list out all of the factors of 81, which are 1, 3, 9, 27, and 81. Now we're going to go ahead and circle the common factors so that way we can create 3 different equivalent fractions. So we're going to have 3, 9, and 27. So we're going to take the steps to write equivalent fractions from 27/81. We're going to divide both our numerator and denominator by 3 to equal 9/27. So that's an equivalent fraction. We're also going to do the same thing. We have 27 over 81, our original fraction, and write an equivalent fraction of that by using a common factor of 9. 27 divided by 9 is 3, and 81 divided by 9 is 9. And then one last time we have 27 over 81, finding a common or equivalent fraction, dividing both sides by, or the numerator and denominator by 27 to equal 1/3. That is our smallest fraction, and the GCF of both 27 and 81 is 27, would be the GCF. Now we're going to switch gears from writing equivalent fractions and finding the greatest common factor of both the numerator and denominator into simplifying fractions by dividing. So let's go ahead and take a look at this example. We have a numerator of 12 and a denominator of 24. I'm sure that all of you can just look at both of those values and realize since they are even numbers, they're automatically divisible by 2, which is correct. But if you guys take a closer look at another number that might be higher, that's divisible by both 12 and 24. I'm going to go ahead and divide both my numerator and denominator by 12 and see what happens. When I divide 12 into 12, that equals 1, and 24 split into 12 parts equals 2, which is 1/2. That fraction just can't get any smaller. So maybe let's take a look at another one. We have, let's do this one, 18 over 27. We're going to divide both the numerator and the denominator by, we'll say 3. Both of them divided by 3. When we divide 18 by 3, that equals 6. And 27 divided by 3, which equals 9. But looking at my numerator and denominator of this new fraction, I know right off the bat that both of those numbers, again, are divisible by 3. So I'm going to simplify once more and divide both the numerator and denominator by 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. And that is my smallest, my simplest fraction of 18 over 27. Another way that I could have done this was to take both of the numbers that I divided my fractions by and multiply them together. So 3 times 3, which equals 9. So if I would have started off by simplifying 18 over 27 by the value of 9, I would have then gotten 2/3. It's just kind of a longer way around it. Alright, so that wraps up this lesson on simplifying fractions. And I want to see if you guys can answer this question. How do you know when a fraction is in simplest form? If you have any specific questions for me on this lesson, please don't hesitate to let me know on BBIM or email. Thanks, guys.